Hello guys, welcome back to Computing Systems YouTube channel. My name is Eugene, and today I'm going to show you how you can install and configure a primary DNS server, a secondary DNS server, and then a stub DNS server. DNS is a system that is used to resolve names into IP addresses, and majority of the internet or the World Wide Web depends on DNS to operate. Most of the names that we use to visit our various websites out there are resolved by a domain naming system or a DNS server. So DNS is very important, and in a network infrastructure it's very important. You need to have a DNS server to ease your access to network resources so that you can use names to access network resources instead of using IP addresses. And name resolution always starts from a host file. So for instance, if a client machine opens its web browser and then type in www.google.com, what the operating system is going to do is to check its host file to see whether the name www.google.com is mapped to google.com's IP address in the system's host file. If it's not there, then the system will go ahead and check its DNS client resolver cache. Anytime a name is resolved by a DNS server for a DNS client, that DNS client keeps a cache of that name and the IP address. So when the system is unable to locate that name in a host file, the second step is to check its client resolver cache to see if it's available. If it's available in its client resolver cache, the DNS client would use that IP to perform the transaction that it needs to perform. If it's unable to find it in its client resolver cache, then that DNS client is going to send a recursive query to a primary DNS server if available. A recursive query requires an authoritative yes answer or an authoritative no answer or a non-authoritative yes answer. I would recommend you visit Microsoft TechNet and read about all these terminologies so that we can go ahead with our labs. And if the DNS server is unable to resolve that name for that DNS client, it will then forward it to a DNS forwarder if available. If a DNS forwarder is not available, it's going to forward it to routine servers on the internet. These are DNS servers on the World Wide Web that resolves external DNS domain namespaces. So if a primary DNS server or a local DNS server is unable to resolve a name that is being requested by a client machine, it sends it to a routine server or a DNS forwarder if available. If there is a DNS forwarder available on the local area network, the primary DNS server will send it to the DNS forwarder, and then the DNS forwarder will then send it to the routine servers on the World Wide Web. But if there is no DNS forwarder, the primary DNS server will then locate the routine servers by itself and then request for name resolution, and then if the name resolution goes through, it will send the feedback to the client. Okay, let's have a look at something over here. I have a diagram here. So this is the lab setup we are going to use. This is going to be our primary DNS server and our secondary DNS server and our stub DNS server. Our primary DNS server is going to have the IP address 192.168.1.1 with the preferred DNS pointing to itself, which is 192.168.1.1, and the alternate DNS will be the IP address of our secondary DNS server, which is 192.168.1.2, as you can see it over here. And then our third DNS server address which is our stub DNS server address, will be 192.168.1.3, which is the IP address of our stub DNS server over here. And when we go to our secondary DNS server, the IP address, as you can see, is 192.168.1.2, and then our primary DNS server or preferred DNS server is our primary DNS server's IP over here, and then the alternate DNS is itself the secondary DNS server, and then the third DNS server or the stub DNS server is the 192.168.1.3, which is the IP address of our stub DNS server over here. And our stub DNS server is also pointing to our primary DNS server as its preferred DNS, the alternate DNS being our secondary DNS server, and then the stub DNS server being itself. Okay, and we have some client machines over here and some network resources, and then we have a switch. All these three servers over here are connected to the same switch. All our client machines and our network resources are connected to the same switch. So this will be our network ID 192.168.1.0, and over here you can see we have three servers on our VMware, and all these three servers are connected to VMnet 2, VMnet 2, VMnet 2. So literally they are all connected to the same switch over here. Okay, so we're going to use this Windows Server 2000 as our primary DNS server, and then Windows Server 2000 II as our secondary DNS server, and this will be our stub DNS server. So let's get things going by starting this our primary DNS server. Actually, it's a member server because we have not installed any network service on it yet. Okay, so when you boot into a server that has not been configured for the first time, you will see the server manager console pops up over here, and you can close it, and you can also stop it from running as startup. But the first thing we're going to do here is to bring our default desktop icons. So I'll bring them here. And then I'll set my IP address real quick. On our diagram, you saw that we have this IP address here for our primary DNS server, which is 192.168.1.1. So we assign that IP address to this machine. I'll stop IPv6 and then assign this IP address 192.168.1.1, and it's pointing to itself 192.168.1.1. I'll click OK over here and click close, and then close this one and close this one. Okay, the next thing I'm going to do here, and this step is very important, we have to set the primary DNS suffix for this our computer. The DNS domain namespace we are going to use here is IAMCT.com. So I'll set a primary DNS suffix, and I'll need to also change the computer name. So I'll right click here on my computer and go to properties. As you can see, my computer name here looks very terrible. So I'll click on change settings here. I'll click on change here, and I'll rename this one to SRV1, and I'll go to more, and I'll set the primary DNS suffix. We're going to use IAMCT.com. I'll click OK here. So my fully qualified domain name for this machine is going to be srv1.iamct.com. I'll click OK over here. and click OK, click close, and click restart. Now system is going to restart, and then apply this computer name to the system. Okay, once the system is done rebooting, I'm going to press Ctrl Alt Insert here on my VMware, and I'll type my admin password P. The files are really disturbing me. It's morning over here and they're making a lot of noise. Okay, so the system is logged on. Server manager is going to pop up in a moment. I just need to wait for it. Okay, server manager is loading. Okay, once server manager is done loading, we can stop it from running at startup so that we can get a chance to load it ourselves. Okay, so I'll click manage here and go to server manager properties, and I'll check do not start server manager automatically at logon, and I'll go OK here. Okay, now the next thing that we need to do is to add the DNS server role. I'll click on add roles and features over here, and then I'll click next here, and I'll select role based or feature based installation. Next, my computer name is here. I'll go next, and I'll check DNS server and click add features, and go next, go next, go next, and install. Okay, so the DNS role is now installing. I'll click close over here, and I'll close my server manager, and I'll click start over here, and then I'll open my DNS console. Once the DNS server console is opened, I'll expand this server name here in the navigation pane, and I'll click on forward lookup zone, right click and select new zone. I'll click next over here. This is my first DNS server on this network, so it's going to be a primary DNS server. I'll go next here, and then I'll type IAMCT.com, which is my DNS domain namespace I'm using for this zone. I'll click next here, leave it at create a new file, go next, allow both secure and non-secure dynamic updates, go next, and then click finish. I have my forward lookup zone configured. I'm going to configure my reverse lookup zone. I'm going to right click on reverse lookup zone, select new zone, go next, primary zone next, IPv4 reverse lookup zone next, and I'll type my network ID, which is 192.168.1, and I'll go next here, leave this default, go next, allow both secure and non-secure dynamic updates, go next, click finish. Okay, now there's one thing that I need to do here, but before that, let's have a look at something. We are going to test name resolution. I'll right click on the server name here, select NS lookup, and it tells me my primary DNS server is unknown. If you finish configuring your DNS server and you see something like this when you run NS lookup, this is what you need to do. Right now, when I open command prompt 2 and I type NS lookup, it gives me unknown. This is very bad. Okay, so I'll click close over here, and this is what you need to do when you see such a problem. You need to come to your forward lookup zone, select your zone name, and then you double click the host file of your primary DNS server. You double click and then check update pointer record, and you click apply. Okay, this is going to update the reverse pointer record of the DNS server's host file. So once we do that, we click refresh, it has been updated, and then when we right click on our server name and we launch NS lookup again, it looks good. It tells us our default DNS server is srv1.umat.com. This is good. When I click OK, I'll click close, and then I'll test from the command prompt too. I'll type ns lookup, and it tells me the name server is srv1.umat.com. This is very good. If you are done installing your DNS server and you configure it and you run ns lookup and you get this on your primary DNS server, it means your DNS server is well configured. Okay, so the next thing that we need to do is to install our secondary DNS server. Okay, so to do that, I need to enter my IP configuration again and add the alternate DNS server address for my secondary DNS server. So I'm going to open my network connections console by typing ncpa.cpl. This is also one way that you can get to your network connections console. Then I'll go to the properties of my Ethernet adapter. I'll go to TCP/IP version 4, select properties, and then I'll add my secondary DNS server address over here. I'll type 192.168.1.2, and I'll go OK over here. I'll click close here, and I'll go and start my secondary DNS server. Once my secondary DNS server is done booting, what I'm going to do here is to bring the default desktop icons again. So I'm going to do that quickly. Okay, and then what I need to do here is to set the IP address to match the network ID of the other DNS server. So I'm going to open my network connections console, and then I'll set this IP address. I'll stop IPv6 and set my IP address here. In our diagram, we indicated that our secondary DNS server is going to use 192.168.1.2 with a preferred DNS 192.168.1.1 and the alternate DNS 192.168.1.2. So let's do that. Okay, once this is done, I need to go and set my primary DNS suffix. So I'll go to my system properties and click change over here, and click change again, and then I'll change this computer name to SRV2, and then I'll click more here, and then I'll set my primary DNS suffix umat.com and go OK here, and I'll go OK here and go OK here and click close, restart. Okay, so once our secondary DNS server reboot, I'll press Ctrl insert here and then log in as an admin. Server manager is going to load in a moment. One thing about a secondary DNS server that you need to know is that with secondary DNS servers, they hold the read-only copy of the DNS zone file. So if your primary DNS server is unavailable, your secondary DNS server cannot write to the DNS database. So the only thing that a secondary DNS server does is serves as a backup for a primary DNS server with name resolution. So the secondary DNS servers do not register DNS names, they only resolve names, because when we're done installing, you see that in the secondary DNS server console you cannot add resource records, which shows that it's read-only. Okay, so server manager is downloading. I'm going to stop it from running as startup by clicking on manage over here and selecting server manager properties, and then I'll check do not start server manager automatically at logon. I'll click OK. Once this is done, The next thing I need to do is to install my DNS server role. So I'll click on add rules and features over here, and then I'll go next. I'll select role based or feature based installation. Next. Select my server name. Go next. And then check DNS server. Click add features and go next. Go next, next, and install. Okay, so the DNS server role is done installing on my secondary DNS server. So I'll click close over here, and then I'll close my server manager. Okay, so once that is done, I'll click on start and open my DNS console. Okay, and then I'll configure my secondary DNS server here. I'll click on my forward lookup zone, right click and select new zone, click next, and this is a secondary DNS server, so the zone name is going to be a secondary zone name, and I'll go next here. So the zone type is going to be a secondary zone. I'll go next here, and I'll type my DNS domain namespace umat.com, and I'll click on next here, and I'll type the IP of my primary DNS server here, which is 192.168.1.1, and I'll click this white space over here, and it shows a green option over here, green mark with my server's name result over here, showing that my primary DNS server it's working very fine. I'll click next here and then click finish, and then I'll click here, and you see a red cross over here showing that the zone was not loaded. This means that we haven't configured zone transfers yet, so our primary DNS server does not trust the secondary DNS server for update. So we're going to do that in a minute, but before that, let's create our reverse tool. I'll click here and right click on my reverse. I'll right click on my reverse lookup zone, select new zone, go next, select secondary zone, go next, IPv4 reverse, next, and I'll type my network ID 192.168.1, and I'll go next. I'll type my primary DNS server's IP 192.168.1.1, click this white space, and it resolves. Then I'll go next, finish. It's also going to show that red cross, but it's no problem. What we're going to do here is to go back to our primary DNS server and configure it to forward update to the secondary DNS server. So I'm going back. This is my primary DNS server. As you can see, when I check the system properties, it shows that this is SRV1, which is my first DNS server. Okay, so I'll open the DNS console, and then on the zone name over here, I'll right click and go to properties and select zone transfers, and then I'll move this radio button to the side and select only to the following servers, and I'll click edit over here and put my secondary DNS server's IP here, 192.168.1.2. It's going to resolve in a minute. Let me just click OK over here, and I'll click this option over here to notify the secondary DNS server. I'll click notify here, click this option, and then switch this radio button to the side and click this side, and I'll type my secondary DNS server's IP 192.168.1.2. Click the white space, go OK. My dog is barking. This dog is too aggressive. Okay, let's move on. Okay, I'll click apply over here, then go OK, and then I'll go to the reverse, right click on it, go to properties, select zone transfers, and then check only to the following servers, and then I'll click edit over here and click this option over here, and I'll put my secondary DNS server's IP here. One 192.168.1.2. Click the white space, go OK, and select notify, and I'll select this radio button over here, and I'll notify 192.168.1.2, which is my secondary DNS server, to come in for update. Click apply OK. Let's check something over here on our previous zone file. I'll go to properties, and I'll go to zone transfers, and when I click this side and go to edit, see that it has resolved now. So it just takes a minute to just resolve the name, so you don't have any problem. Okay, let's go to our secondary DNS server also and do some verification over here. Once you come here, you can also configure this zone over here to send update to your primary DNS server. So this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to right click on the zone name and go to properties, and then on the zone transfers tab, I'll check allow zone transfers to the following servers, and then I'll configure it to also send update to the primary DNS server. I'll click edit over here and put the primary DNS server's IP over here, 192.168.1.1, and go OK, and then go notify, and I'll click this option and type 192.168.1.1, click the white space, go OK, apply OK. Then I'll go to the reverse, right click, go to properties, select zone transfers, check allow zone transfers, select only to the following servers, click edit, and put my primary DNS server address over here. Click the white space, go OK, select notify, click this option over here, and I'll put 192.168.1.1. Click the white space, go OK, apply OK. And now when I refresh over here, everything looks good. My secondary DNS server is well configured now, so it's having resource records from the primary DNS server. Any new update that I add over here on my primary DNS server will be replicated or transferred to my secondary DNS server. The resource records here looks the same as what we have over here. This is good. All right, now the next thing you're going to do is to configure our stub DNS server, but please make sure you visit Microsoft TechNet and read about the essence of all these resource records, the roles that they play, the SOA record, the NS record, the pointer records. And when you come to the forward lookup zone 2, we have host records, NS records, SOA record, and this serial number plays a very important role. When you double click on the SOA record, you see that it has a serial number. It plays a very important role. I would advise you to go to microsofttechnet.com and then read about them. Okay, but this is our secondary DNS server, and you see that when I right click in the secondary DNS servers zone over here, I don't get a chance to add resource records, unlike my primary DNS server that I can add aliases and MX records and stuff. I'm not able to do anything over here just because secondary DNS servers are read only. Okay, they are read only, and you can change it. If your primary DNS server goes down, you can change your secondary DNS server to act like your primary DNS server, so that it becomes read write by going to the properties of the secondary DNS server over here, and you go to the properties of the zone name, and then you can click change over here, then you change it to be a primary DNS server. But this is only done when this primary DNS server is unavailable. Okay, it's unavailable for a very long time. You need to change the zone type over here to be a primary zone so that clients can register their names with this secondary DNS server. Okay, this is good. Now, the next thing we're going to do is to have a look at how we can configure our stub DNS server, our third DNS server. Stub DNS servers are not usually used in these days, but for the sake of redundancy, it's good for you to have a stub DNS server, so that in case your primary and your secondary DNS server goes down, you can let your stub DNS server serve your clients. You can change your stub DNS server to your primary DNS server so that you can register names and write to the DNS database. Okay, so this is our stub DNS server. I'm going to start it. And from our diagram, you saw that our stub DNS server is going to use the IP 192.168.1.3. Okay, so that is the IP you're going to assign to it, and these are the alternate DNS addresses that we're going to assign to it. So before we even start installing DNS over here on our stub DNS server, we need to set the third DNS address for our primary DNS server and then our secondary DNS server. Okay, so let's do that quickly and then move back to our stub DNS server. So I'll go to my primary DNS server, and then I'll go to the network connections console, and then I'll go to the properties of my Ethernet adapter, and then I'll click advanced over here. And mind you, you don't add the IP address here. These are for IP addresses. You select DNS and then you add the third DNS address. So I'll type 192.168.1.3 to be my third DNS server address, and I'll go OK here, go OK, click close, and I'll go to my secondary DNS server and I'll do the same thing there. I'll open my network connections console, go to the properties of my Ethernet adapter, and then click advanced here, go to DNS, and then add my third DNS server address, .1.3. Okay, this is okay. Then I can close this one. Okay, once this is done, we can go to our third DNS server. This is my stub DNS server. So first things first, I would bring my desktop icons, and then I'll set my IP address. I'll disable TCP/IP version 6 and then go to properties. And from our diagram, we know that we have to use this address for our stub DNS server. This one, 192.168.1.3. Okay, so I'll go to 192.168. Okay, so I'll type 192.168.1.3, and preferred is going to be my primary 192.168.1.1. Alternate is going to be my secondary 192.168.1.2, and I'll click advanced, select DNS, and then add the stub DNS server address for this particular machine, 192.168.1.3. I'll click add, go OK, click close. And the next thing I need to do here is to set a primary DNS suffix and change the computer name. So I'll go to properties of my system and then click change settings over here, and then click change again, and then I'll name this one SRV3, and I'll click more and put my DNS domain namespace here, which is umat.com, and I'll go OK, 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 close, and restart. Okay, so once the system is done restarting, I'll press Ctrl to insert here and then type my admin password. P. Okay, enter. This is my third DNS server, my stub DNS server. This is it. Okay, so once our stub DNS server is downloading, what we're going to do is to add our DNS server role and then configure it to be a stub DNS server. So I'll click add rules over here on my server manager. I'll click next, select role based or feature based installation, next, and I'll select next again, and then I'll check DNS, add features, go next, next, install. The installation is complete. I'll click close over here, click close, and then I'll click start and open my DNS console. The stub DNS server, unlike the secondary DNS server, does not keep a copy of all the resource records we have in the DNS zone. It only keeps a copy of the most important DNS resource records, which is the SOA record, the NS record, and then the host file for our primary DNS server. These are the only resource records it keeps, and then there are various reverse records. Okay, so I'm going to create a new zone over here on my stub DNS server. As you can see, this is my third DNS server. I'll go next, and then this is a stub zone, and click next over here, and I'll put my DNS domain namespace over here, umat.com. Click next, I'll put my primary and my secondary DNS server addresses over here, 192.168.1.1. I'll click the white space and then put 192.168.1.2 and then click the white space. Okay, then I'll go next, finish. Then I'll create a reverse. It's a stub zone. Next. I'll put my network ID here, 192.168.1, and I'll go next. I'll put my primary DNS server, my secondary DNS server addresses over here. And this is for my primary DNS server, SRV1, and I'll put 192.168.1.2 for SRV2, my secondary DNS server. And I'll go next here and finish. Still having the same information that we requested. Okay, so this looks good. This has loaded successfully, but in case in future you run into problems like you come here and then there's a red cross sign over here telling you that you cannot get updates from your primary DNS server, this is what you need to do. You have to go to your primary DNS server, SRV1. Okay, this is our primary DNS server. This is SRV1. You need to go to a DNS server console, and then on the DNS zone you go to properties, zone transfers, and you add the IP for our third DNS server over here. So you go to edit, then you type 192.168.1.1.1.3. you click this area. It's going to resolve in a minute. You just have to notify it. So I'll type 192.168.1.3, go OK, apply OK, Then on the reverse too, I'll do the same thing. I'll add the third DNS server address over here, 192.168.1.3, and then I'll notify it automatically. 192.168.1.3. It will notify it and this will get resolved. Okay, so once this is done, you don't have any problems. Our primary DNS server is working nice. And then when we go to our secondary DNS server 2, it's also looking good. And then our stub DNS server 2 is looking fine over here. This is good. And it's also read-only, so you cannot make any changes here. Okay, so that is that for installing and configuring primary DNS servers, secondary DNS servers, and stub DNS servers. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. See you next time. Bye bye.